Well, you've done it now. You're listening to KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station. So expect the unexpected.
After disappointing reports from two huge tech companies. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 504 points. The S&P dropped 128, and the Nasdaq lost 654 points. President Biden will speak to Americans directly for the first time about his decision to withdraw from the 2024 election. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre spoke about Biden exiting the race.
The decision that he made on Sunday was about putting country first, was about his party, and was about the American people.
Jean-Pierre also pushed back against calls for the president to resign. Republicans and critics of the president argue if he's unfit to be the Democratic nominee, he's unfit to continue serving his term. His speech is set for 8 p.m. Eastern. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the U.S. and Israel must always stand together.
Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
During an address to a joint meeting of Congress today, the Prime Minister thanked lawmakers on both sides of the aisles for their support and solidarity as Israel continues its war on Hamas. He said he will not rest until all the hostages taken during the militant group's October attack on Israel are returned and Hamas is defeated. The FAA is increasing oversight for Southwest Airlines after a series of close calls. In a statement, it said it's looking into the airline to ensure it is complying with federal safety regulations. This comes as there's ongoing worries about the state of U.S. aviation that first began in January when a door panel on a Boeing aircraft blew out midair. The FAA didn't specify which incident sparked its latest audit announcement for Southwest. You're listening to the latest on NBC News Radio.
Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Eat bread, lose weight. That's right. Eat bread, lose weight. Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph from Joseph's Organic Bakery. We offer ancient grain bread from the Bible. That's right. Ancient grain bread from the Bible. We stone grind daily, ferment using sourdough, and bake that same day. Everything is then shipped fresh to our customers nationwide. So if you're interested in feeling good, improving your digestion, knocking down your blood pressure, and balancing your blood sugar, pick up the phone, give us a call, 954-541-4062, 954-541-4062, or you can order online, veganbakerymiami.com, veganbakerymiami.com.
What does it take to take on Alzheimer's? Awareness that nearly 2/3 of those diagnosed are women, including Black women. Dedication to lowering your risk by eating healthy and monitoring blood pressure. And confidence to talk to your healthcare provider about screening and early detection. You have what it takes to take on Alzheimer's. Learn about signs and screening at takeonalz.com. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Spear, a licensed agent with Litchfield Insurance Associates here in Beaumont. A large portion of Americans don't have life insurance or don't have enough. Whether you need a temporary policy, something to help with income during retirement, or making sure your final expenses are taken care of, having life insurance is an act of love and security for your whole family. Having a local trusted agent makes navigating through the sometimes complex world of life insurance so much easier. And I would love to be the one to help you. I'm Kaylee Spear. For your free consultation, people are calling 951-769-0005. 951-769-0005.
KCAA.
Welcome to the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, a brand new show about labor and worker issues. The host of the show is Randy Corrigan, Secretary Treasurer and Principal Office and leader of Teamsters 1932, one of the largest public sector labor unions on the West Coast, representing workers in government and non-sworn law enforcement personnel. Randy Corrigan is a 30-year Teamster who first became involved in the labor movement by volunteering his time as an organizer with the Teamsters Union at the age of 21. Since then, he's helped thousands organize, mobilize, and achieve bargaining rights. He accomplished this by spending countless hours with brave men and women all over Southern California, in their living rooms, on the picket line, to bring workers towards victory. This is the Worker Power Hour. And now here's the host of the show, Randy Corrigan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Longtime organizer, first-time radio host, Randy Corrigan with the Worker Power Hour, KCAA 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Okay, we're back live. We got cut off last week. Apparently, it was a Frontier worker or somebody working on the fiber optics going over the freeway. Somebody cut the line. Now, I would venture to say it was not a Teamster that cut us off. It's probably another. Let's blame it on a non-union worker. Sorry for all you non-union workers. We're gonna lay the blame on you. But for those of you that were listening live last week, we got cut off about 10, 12 minutes into the show, and boom, everything was lost, and we were unable to get the show up and running. So we're just gonna do the show today. That's a cool thing about having your own show, is you got the ability to just roll with it. And so what I always do at the beginning of the show is I talk about the previous show that we did, which was on July 10th. Clearly, we didn't have a show on the 17th. I mean, we did, but we didn't. And on that show, I think the thing that stood out the most, and we talked about this before we got so rudely cut off by the internet provider, was having Teresa on the show, and she works in the burn unit at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center. And so shout out for her and her group, hearing the stories of what our members have to deal with at ARMC, and hearing some specific situations and stories in which Teresa did at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center is, again, it's just a testament for how great the Teamsters are, how phenomenal our membership is, and how important they are to the everyday community, all around, not just the country, but right here specifically in the Inland Empire. Carlos, I'm joined by Carlos. For those of you that don't know, Carlos is the one that usually gives me my 3 Teamster jobs, but on the back side of the hour, we're going to have Karen Jones on, and we're going to have this really cool discussion about the 90th anniversary of the Minneapolis strike, which is a very, very important moment in labor history in America. And so Carlos Gonzalez is on, and he will help me with that part of the show, and he's probably going to chime in here. But what stuck out to you in the show that Teresa did last week, Carlos?
A lot. Like, I didn't know her.
And you were told, someone texted me to tell you to smile while you're on camera, by the way.
Sorry. What stuck out with me on that particular show was I didn't know how Teresa actually got into her position at ARMC. And then when she talked about
finding the job,
how she was there with her son and just building a relationship with the people that were working there, and then she kind of got into that field, and it makes sense because she totally fits the role that she's in now, working at ARMC, because she's the same way as as a steward, passionate, caring, not just steward. She's just a great member. Teresa's an all-around great member, and we're lucky to have her at Local 1932.
Yeah, she contributes to a lot of areas of the organization. She's on a number of committees. She's on our NEO team, which is the best team in the entire country as far as signing up new employees within the orientation. our numbers are actually off the charts compared to everybody else. I'm not saying that just because I'm from the local, but it's just statistically true. Her and other individuals have just been tremendous in that space, and we really appreciate the work that she does. And clearly, yeah, I agree with you. Her tripping on the job the way she did, and then her son being treated and going through the emergency room there, and then applying for a job, and then obviously becoming a Teamster as time went on. And now she pays back to the community by being so helpful, like she spelled out on the show. So please feel free to go back and listen to the show on July 10th, and you could hear some really good stories. She actually told a really funny story and made us all a little uncomfortable as we laughed. But I guess it's that hospital humor, and it was great. So again, shout out, great show that we had on July 10th, and again, for all of you at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, we appreciate the work that you do. It being at the front line of taking care of individuals when they're their most needy and they're most vulnerable in a very difficult environment sometimes for them. We really appreciate the work that you do. That's just one of literally thousands of jobs that we represent that are that important to our local community. And so, anything else you want to add to that, Carlos? Anything else stick out?
No, I mean,
no.
just
smile. You're not smiling yet. I think I got another text. You need to smile. Hurry up. Anyway, so let's move on to the next part of the show, and that is our shout-outs. We have been doing live shout-outs, those that are listening live to the show. Obviously, we can't shout out to every single person that's listening live, but those that we know and are identifying themselves as listening, we're feel free to email us at radio show. You gonna hold that up, Mark? Hey, Mark, radio show email. I need to see it real quick. Thanks, man. Radio show at teamsters1932.org. If you are listening live, please send us an email. I'm going to go through some of the shout-outs right now. If you're listening live, we like to recognize you. The Del Rosa Tad is listening live, so shout-out to the Del Rosa Tad. Also, Lori Ryan at the DA's office is listening in live. For those of you that don't remember, she was actually on the show a couple months ago, Lori, and we had Ryan, who was one of her coworkers in here. She was here on victims of violence and advocacy in that space. Vicki Thompson from Grand Terrace is listening live, and as well as the Grand Terrace members are listening live. Rady's Children's Hospital are listening live. I'm going to talk about them in a few minutes. And then we have Jeff Sanchez in Pomona. Shout out to you, Jeff. I hear you listen a lot, and sorry for overlooking you if we did. Jeff, we really appreciate the work that you do out there in P-Town. And then Carlos Resendez with Altadena. He actually saw him on Sunday right before we went to the Amazon picket line. He's listening live, and again, we appreciate you sharing the show and talking about the show. And those of you that want a live shout out, make sure you let us know. Something going on behind me that y'all are looking at right now? That's one of the cool things about a live show. So the next part of the show is the Teamster Jobs. For those of you that listened last week, you're going to hear it again. But the reason why we're repeating it is it actually ties to the back half of the show. And these are old Teamster jobs. They're actually not currently Teamster jobs now, just because these are 80, 90, 100-year-old jobs that have cycled out. But the first one is milk delivery guys. Lecheros. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's close enough.
Lechero?
Yeah,
Lechero?
close enough.
Okay. See, I just got to
get an A for effort.
I get it, but I don't get a...
You don't get an S for Spanish.
No?
But you get an A for effort.
All right. For those of you that don't... you may remember seeing an old show or a video or something, and the milk used to get delivered to the doorstep. Milk only lasted a couple days back then. Obviously, it lasts like a year now, and I'm clearly exaggerating, but I trip out. Look at the expiration date, and apparently there's a whole bunch of. It's organic, and it's supposed to be all this fresh stuff, and I go, it's going to last 6 weeks. Like, I don't know, I don't understand. But hey, back in the day, those were all Teamsters that delivered milk to your doorstep, and so shout out to them, all those milk delivery guys that were delivering back in the day. We really appreciate, and those of you that may be retired now and listening. Everything, bread was delivered to your doorstep. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was delivered to your doorstep way before Amazon thought that they cornered the market on this. Teamsters have been actually delivering to the doorstep before there were power vehicles. When it was a horse and buggy, we were making deliveries to individuals' doorsteps. So let's not forget that. The next job is garage service workers. There used to be a union service sign at the gas pumps or hanging out in front of the service center right above the doors where you would go inside. Big shout out to that. I actually remember in Fontana, there was a service station when I was a kid on the corner of Fontana Avenue and Citrus. It was actually the Randall, Fontana Avenue, and Citrus. There used to be a gas station there. And it had a union service, one of those union service tins hanging in the front there, and that's how you were able to identify whether or not it was a Teamster or union service station, so that when you got gas or you got your tires done or you got your water checked or whatever that you were doing, you knew what differentiated a union shop from a non-union shop. And some of us actually have that symbol, have that sign. I have a couple of them. One of them at the 1932 office there in San Bernardino, a real big one. Actually, Kamek gifted that one to me. He had it framed and gave it to me. Really appreciate that, because it's really symbolic of a time in which there was a deep appreciation on the road for those whom were union, and making sure that whomever that was going to service them, help their vehicle or repair their tire or whatever it was. So union service, the union service symbol out in front of a gas station. So one of those Teamster jobs. The last one is delivering coal. We're not talking about just like coming from the mine. We're actually talking about coal being, this is where we got cut off last week.
Yeah.
We were literally just talking about this and boom, somebody cut the line off. Maybe it was a mad coal driver back in the day. It was a guy, maybe he was on the wrong side of a picket line or a strike or something for coal drivers. Anyway, back then, coal was delivered to every home because of the furnaces.
Correct.
Is that's how it kept the house warm, and it were Teamsters that not only it was the mine workers who worked at the mines. They extracted the coal out of the ground. If it was on wheels, it was a Teamster that got it to a location that would then other delivery trucks, vehicles would then sort it out and then getting it to the front door. So coal used to be just like milk. It used to be delivered. Now this job is important for today's conversation because it was coal drivers back in 1934, one of those groups of workers that struck in the Minneapolis strike that we're going to talk about on the backside of the hour.
During the wintertime.
That is correct. During the wintertime. Think about that. Think about the sacrifice that everybody made. So, like I said, on the backside of the hour with Karen Jones, we are going to talk about that. And let's not forget about those Teamsters back then that delivered coal to everybody's doorstep in America. Really appreciate them.
Did they give them to Santa for some of the people that needed
They
coal?
probably did. I think for those who don't know, Dr. G is here. He's going to be our Teamster Advantage partner in a minute. He couldn't help himself. He had to jump in. Nothing wrong with that. He wants to know, if you didn't hear, is that the same coal that Santa would put in for bad kids?
Yeah.
Probably. I would assume so, because I got plenty of coal when I was a kid. Even though coal was phased out by then.
Yeah, I got coal too.
Yeah, we got coal. I didn't get the good stuff. I would blame it on maybe a poor upbringing. Maybe not. It wasn't bad. It wasn't that bad. I don't know. Who knows? It's my story to tell now that I'm 52 years old. All right. With that, I want to move on to the next part of the show, which is current labor news, which is a lot of news right now. And the first thing I want to report on at Teamsters Local 1932 is the city of Rialto ratified their first contract under the Teamster 1932 banner last week. Shout out to those workers in the city of Rialto. Welcome to the Teamster family. I know we organized them about a year ago, and we just got the first contract done here recently. So we got to get them here pretty soon on Listening Live, get a live shout out to them hopefully pretty soon. And then we were in the Inland Empire Community News. We secured the early implementation of SB 525, and it's actually hit more than the Inland Empire Community News. Has been a bunch of news outlets that's carried that story, so it's always good to see Teamsters Local 1932 in the news. The first news I really want to talk about just happened this last couple days, and that was Teamsters Local 1699's UNOC. They were on strike. Those nurses at Children's Rady Hospital in San Diego walked off the job for 2 days, and you want to talk about a phenomenal picket line. The energy there was just unmatched, and to see the energy and the excitement. And I think the thing that stuck out to me the most on that picket line was the creativeness in all the different signs.
I love the signs.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that many different signs so fast, like in one day. It's like they were around the corner competing and putting the signs in, and there was a sign making contest to see who had the best sayings. Incredible. I don't know. Did you have anything you want to add on that, Carlos?
That's the first thing I noticed was the signs. Like, it reminded me of the teacher strike because they had pretty cool signs too. But the signs were creative. One of them was, we don't want your pizza. Just give us the dough. Like, that one was cool.
Yeah, don't give it. Right.
I think the one was, it had the girl from Titanic, and it said, "Pay me like one of your traveler girls," like from the movie Titanic when he says, "Pay me like one of your French girls," but it said that, "Pay me like one of your traveler nurses." You talk a little bit about that, but the signs were amazing. The group was amazing. One of the best picket lines I've been on. It was just a fun group.
They had a great time.
They
That
did.
picket line went from 6:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Anybody who was there didn't really want to leave because the energy was so good. It was phenomenal. Over 1,600 nurses participated in the strike for 2 days. Shout out to Local 63, 630, 1699, 996, Joint Council 42, as well as 1932. We obviously had our bus down there as a shuttle for 2 days, and we loved getting everybody on the bus because we needed to. They secured a parking lot at the college about a mile away. And doing that, obviously, you had to get everybody from the parking lot over to the picket line, and our bus was shuttling them back and forth. And man, did they do a great job! They were just phenomenal. Shout out to Katie. She is the Secretary Treasurer of UNOC at 1699. Amazing leadership. That executive board and bargaining team did a really good job of really just leading that picket line. And so apparently they're going to be back at the bargaining table here pretty soon if they're not already. I didn't want to bug Katie today. I figured she had to rest a little bit and recover from a pretty incredible day. And this Worker Power Hour, KCAA 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Now, so everybody knows I'm going to be running a little bit behind here. do have some news to cover, and I guess it's my show. I have the ability to do that, right, Carlos?
You do whatever you want with it.
Right. So kind of fun. I'm having a good time with this. The next one is Amazon workers at a major West Coast air hub walked off the job on Sunday. Many of us were there and were present. A very large portion of the group walked off the job, joined the picket line. Some of them actually went home. Workers are tired of low wages, horrible working conditions, and no path forward for retirement. They held 2 strong picket lines in the sun. It was obviously over 100 degrees. Big shout out for SEIU in LA came out to show support, as well as there are picket lines as we speak right now in Georgia and in Cincinnati. So workers in Georgia have walked off the job at a delivery station there, as well as in Cincinnati. We had a bunch of workers at an air hub there walk off the job today. And so more and more workers are actually standing together at Amazon and taking charge and taking this challenge into their own hands, taking control, taking direct action. The next issue on the news I want to report is the Disney workers have voted to strike. They have authorized to strike. Shout out to them. And the last thing in the news, seeing that I'm running late, I want to talk about and want to spend a few minutes chatting about is the RNC speech, the Republican National Convention speech that General President O'Brien did at the Republican National Convention. And I'll tell you, my phone blew up from a lot of Democrats who were upset about it. And I understand that some people are worried about the optics. As a matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, we had Mark on the show, Mark Westwood, and we had a lively discussion about whether O'Brien should have gone to the RNC and spoke or not. Now, let me remind everybody, we asked the general president asked to speak at both the RNC and the DNC. And some will say, well, you shouldn't go to the RNC because the Republicans have been so bad to labor. Well, you also have to remember it's important for us to start challenging those in the Republican Party. And I'm a former Republican. It's important for us to challenge those in the Republican Party to hold their party accountable to protect workers. And that, yes, the Republican Party has been very bad on that subject when it comes to protecting working people. Clearly, their policies have been very hurtful, but that doesn't mean you completely unplug yourself from the audience. And what I witnessed Sean do was take a message right to the people. And I'll tell you, it was kind of an awkward setting if you watched it. And you go back, and people should go back and watch, especially if you're a diehard labor person and you're mad about the situation. Take your emotions out of it and watch how O'Brien delivered a very powerful message about working people being left behind and corporate elites and corporate America crushing workers. He brought that message into the RNC, on the floor of the RNC, and you could see a whole bunch of people kind of standing around looking at each other going, are we supposed to clap right now? And it was like, and I got to hand it to him. That is got to be a very difficult setting to do that in. And there was no endorsement given. And, at the end of the day, we do have to talk to Republican candidates, and we got to talk to Democratic candidates, and we got to get there, got to hear them out. And we then got to make a decision on what is in the best interest of the membership as a result of all the information that's taken in. That doesn't mean that just because someone's policies are horrible on the subject that you just cut yourself out from the entire audience. That's part of what the problem is in America right now, is that we don't want to listen to each other, and we don't want to take it down a notch and have a fruitful conversation where we try to understand the other perspective that we may even completely oppose. Carlos, I know you look like you want to chomp at the bit to add to this.
I wasn't happy that he went there in the beginning, but when I watched the speech, I was proud of the general president and proud to be a Teamster because he named names. He called out Amazon, called out Walmart,
That's right.
Called out Yellow Freight for filing bankruptcy and eliminating all those jobs. And I feel like looking back in the speech, I'm like, that's what we do as Teamsters. We go in the lion's den and we let them know how we feel. It's no different from us protesting outside of a corporate office. Imagine walking into the corporate boardroom and saying, this is how I feel. And I think that's what he did. And I think for those that are upset, I wish they would just take the time to actually just listen to the speech.
And there are a lot of Republicans that are, union members. And I had a lot of union members that are Republicans talk to me either in person when I saw them at certain things or reach out to me or text me or call me that say they appreciated him being there. Yeah. And so there's an audience there to bring a message to that's never been, and it's never happened before. So we could disagree on whether or not he should have done it. The decision was to be there. Mm-hmm. And then when he was there, he made it very clear that corporate America has to step up and take care of workers. The parties have to step up and take care of workers. And I really thought it was important to use as a point of reference here and today, especially the fact that we're going to talk with Karen Jones here in a bit. And I know I've got Dr. G sitting here right next to me, and my favorite part of the show, which is the Teamster Advantage part of the show. Our Teamster Advantage program has more than 1,000 small businesses connected to it throughout the Inland Empire and other counties within Southern California, and we're very proud of the relationship that we have there. And with that, I'm going to be running a little late on my break. I'm probably going to have to put the break at about, sorry, Karen, I know you're listening in. I'm going to have to push into our space a little bit there, but I'll probably do the break in about 5 or 7 minutes. I'll give you about a minute heads up when I move into it. But I really want to get Dr. G in here. He's been a great partner when it comes to the Teamster Advantage program, number one. Number two, the other thing is he's been very helpful to the members from my perspective. Whenever we have members in need with particular situations, he shows up at all the functions and events and tries to help out. Genuinely a really, really good person. And and is a Teamster, one of our longest standing Teamster Advantage partners with Ava Dental Group. And with that, Dr. G, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about the great stuff you have?
Great. Well, my name is Abraham Garbanian. I go by Dr. G. What I'm most proud of is my background. my father was a child slave, and I have a very big appreciation for unions because where I'm from originally, I'm from Iran originally, and unions are not strong there. Whenever a union leader stands up, their place is in jail over there.
Right.
It's not a picket line. And my father was not represented, and as a result, he was in slavery, and he did not get prevailing wages. He only got fed the food and worked for food. And for me,
which a large percentage of the world's population still lives this way, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
And I have a huge appreciation for the labor movement in America. My father, when he immigrated to U.S. and he brought me in, he put all of his might behind me to get my education. He really appreciated the labor movement here, and he had a lot of fun with all the events we went to and all that. And so when I became a dentist, Dad's condition was that I gotta give back. I gotta make sure I don't forget where I come from, and it's been a pleasure. We are the first organization, first dental group in the state of Washington and Oregon that voluntarily organized our offices. In the Eastern Washington, we are with Teamsters. It's a great alliance with Teamsters. Teamsters are amazing. I'm not just saying because you're sitting here. There are other labor.
It doesn't hurt though, right?
No. It's Teamsters. I have great connection with a lot of different unions, but I've seen Teamsters take amazing care of their membership. And fast forwarding into when we moved down to California, it's been amazing. We have had a great reception from the Teamsters, such as yourself, who fight for their membership. And naturally, we also unionized our offices down here in California. These are independent offices, by the way. We are not corporate dentistry. We are not a franchise. These are all independent dentists banded together against corporate dentistry. We do not talk about profits in our meetings. We all talk about treating those patients like our family members. And it's really important to us. We have a lot of people from retired union members who actually work in our organization because we're not afraid of what we have. We like to show what we really are about. And we have been giving discounts to union members. We are giving lifetime free teeth whitening to all these members. I really believe that nobody more than a union worker who has calluses on their hands, like my father, deserves the paraffin treatment in the dental office. So we have those paraffin machines in our offices, and really nobody more than these construction workers, truck drivers, that they are working all day with their hands, and those hardworking hands deserve the paraffin treatment more than the folks that are used to that pampering all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for us going out of the way and pampering these people, these brothers and sisters have been the utmost pleasure. And I'm proud to say, if you want to know who somebody really is, look at their kids. My daughter is 16 years old, and she's an activist. She's doing amazing painting. She's out there helping people. It's just wonderful to experience that. And where I come, just because I have some degree, it doesn't mean a damn thing. It's to me is a service that we give, and it's been a pleasure. And on top of that, we've been giving discounts to union members, like whenever they have these benefits, especially like their fillings and simple procedures that they get done, we write off the patient portion on those simple procedures. But what's most important that I have convinced our dentists to do is whenever a member loses their benefits for whatever reason, they lose their job, they go on strike. Employers, what they do,
they cut off the benefits.
Yes. First thing they do is they put their foot in the throat of the employees, cutting the benefits to put pressure on them to get them back to work. So what we did first time when we were in Washington, a great mentor of mine, Michael Williams, he passed away last year, unfortunately at a young age. Michael said, "Hey, Abraham, we need to go and help all these machinists that they're on strike. So what do you want me to do?" He said, "Let's give them free emergency care." And that's what we did. And since then, every time we have any union member not only going strike, any union member is out of benefits for whatever reason, they come to our offices. We give them free emergency care. And
did you hear that? Isn't this amazing? So if you're a Teamster or a union member and you've already, you've been participating with Ava Dental, like you're on strike and an emergency comes up, they're going to take care of you. Like at the time, and obviously when workers are banding together to do what they got to do in a time of need, and then an emergency comes up, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, that has a lot to say about the principles of your organization, and we appreciate that. Let's, how many locations do you have in Southern California?
We got a bunch. I lost count.
I know you got one in Riverside. You got one in San Bernardino. You got one in Upland.
Yes.
You got one Rialto?
Yes.
Oh, there's one in Rialto now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. We got a bunch of offices, and we are constantly recruiting more and more dentists to join us. And our criteria are pretty strict. The offices have to be very clean. They have to be all OSHA compliant. Everything we go with a fine tooth comb, because just because they give a discount.
Fine toothbrush.
Yeah. We actually have these giant toothbrushes in every one of our offices.
Yes, you do.
And we are very careful to make sure that we don't let anybody get into our offices, our group, who is greedy and they just want to make a buck. We want people who have the heart. Our logo is a heart.
Yes,
and
it is.
I take a lot of pride in that. I feel that as long as I'm alive, I want to make sure that these union members get quality care at a discounted price, but most importantly, accommodations like these workers.
I'm going to have to pull the hook on you. I got to pull the hook on you. I'm running late here. I appreciate it, Dr. G.
Thank you.
Dr. G has been a great partner here. It's a Worker Power Hour. I'm going to go to break here in a few minutes. In about 30 seconds. But we really appreciate the relationship with the Teamster Advantage program. You've been in since day one. You also have a Union Perks program, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, really appreciate that too. Maybe come back on. We can talk about that at a later date. But thanks for being here and partnering and taking care of so many Teamsters in the last all the years that I've known you. And Ava Dental shows up to all these events that we have. They show up and they give away stuff to the kids and just very interactive and proactive. And, there's a lot of value in that. You don't see a lot of that today. We really appreciate that, Dr. G. So let's, this is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, KCAA. Let's go to break here. Let's take about a 60-second break, and then we'll see you back on the other side of the hour. On the other side of the break.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future of working families. Teamsters1932.org.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
All right, Randy Corrigan here, back on the Worker Power Hour. Long-time organizer, first-time radio host. And now I get to introduce Karen Jones, who is the IBT's historian. Are we going to get Karen on the screen here? Am I going to be able to, because I can see her over there through the window, but am I going to be able to see her here? Okay, I'll let you work on it. I'll stop bothering you. But what I'll do is I'll just do it real quick.
You keep cutting out, by the way.
Okay, we'll try to figure that one out too. Thanks for letting us know, Karen. Karen is our historian at the IBT, and she is phenomenal. Anybody who has seen her do a presentation, anybody who has been in any of her conferences or trainings. Yeah, you guys can walk in front. You're fine. Go ahead and get it. No big deal. recognizes what a phenomenal storyteller she is, and also how much information she has retained over a long period of time, and not just retained, she's hunted this information down to really tell the story about Teamster history, to tell the real story about Teamster history, and to make sure that we really understand all those really cool nuggets and understand all those really important pieces. And with that, Karen, you are an honorary Teamsters Local 1932 member, because we love you and you're welcome to Southern California and our local anytime. Anywhere you want to go, you let us know. We're going to get you there.
That's good to know.
So with that, we've got
your local is my absolute favorite. So
we'll make sure not to share this with
Randy,
anybody.
you're really cutting it.
Not me. I'm going to tell everybody.
So we've got Karen cutting out on our side. I can hear her pretty well, but for some reason she's not hearing us. I'm assuming that's on the Skype side of things. So with that, instead of us...
I hear you a bit, and then you cut out. So
okay. So why don't you just go ahead and get started, Karen? And on our side, we're hearing it fine. I apologize if the technology on your side is not doing well, but the show is picking you up perfectly. So let's start here. You're going to help us tell the story about a very important incident from July 20th of 1934.
Bloody Friday.
Yeah, to you, to me, it's one of the most important, if not the most important, moment in labor history. Why don't you describe the scene?
I would agree with you. The strike had been going on for some time. They had settled and then went back on strike, and tensions were really, really high. The Citizens Alliance, which was the group that was bringing in strike breakers and whatnot, were getting furious because the Teamsters were not giving in. They were not buckling under the pressure, and so tensions are very, very high. And on July 20th, a group of the strikers were going to do what they called flying pickets, where they jumped on a truck and went different places, and a large crowd was walking the picket. And unfortunately, at that point, a group of policemen and special deputies who had been deputized by the mayor began to shoot into the crowd. And the crowd was unarmed. Taking a little step back, there was a steering committee for the strike made up of rank and file, and they had put a moratorium on carrying arms or having any violence, starting the violence. So they're completely unarmed, and the police shoot into the crowd. They kill 2, and they injure 67. And as the 67 that are injured are being checked by doctors, it becomes apparent what had happened, because they all had been shot in the back. So as they were running from the police were shooting them. So that was the scene on the 20th.
You know, and one of the things I think that it should remind us of, and we should really appreciate, is how much more difficult it was at that time. In other words, we complain today because the cops break a line or they do this or do that. I mean, back then they literally shot you, and that is exactly what you're telling me.
Because basically being in a union was still illegal. It was tolerated. Obviously, there were unions. The Teamsters were getting pretty strong in the 30s, but it technically was illegal. Unions were not seen as legitimate representatives of workers. So police could do whatever they wanted.
So the workers of this era, what they did actually created all the laws in which we take for granted today, for the most part, right? And so clearly, I think that one of the things that we should really discuss here is that even though this moment, the Minneapolis truckers strike making history on July 20th of 1934, that 90 years ago, just a few days ago, that there was work that had to be done to build up to this, right? In other words, it wasn't like it just kind of sparked and something happened. There was a ton of work that led up to that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
One of the things that is so unique about this strike and this effort that was made, and I call it an effort because you're right, there was all kinds of planning that went into this. This didn't just happen. Started out with small coal strikes, and then, you know, as they started organizing them, they moved in calling for a general strike. But what is so interesting is, first of all, Minneapolis was extremely anti-union. And by the time the strike was over and the Teamsters were done, Minneapolis was a union town. And that was all due to what the Teamsters had done. But they started planning right away. They came up with, they elected a strong leadership. They created this steering committee of rank and file members. They planned. They rented a headquarters before they even called the strike. They set up an infirmary. They set up a soup kitchen. They got the women involved. They set up a women's auxiliary for them to do handle some of the aspects of the strike. This is all before they even went on strike.
Yeah, before the first one, right?
Yeah. And they had meetings. They talked about what their goals were, what their plan was, how they were going to do this, how they were going to do this. Everything was planned. And they came up with rules, and they really, probably the biggest thing that they did was they went person to person. They used their personal connections and brought people to these meetings.
One-on-one conversations.
Everybody involved. They didn't leave, you know, anybody out in the cold.
Right. They did.
Everybody was tapped on the shoulder and said, "We need you, buddy. We need you."
One-on-one conversations to move people, right?
Absolutely.
Carlos.
Absolutely. And the wives actually, later on in the strike, as other unions joined the strike, the wives would go to their church meetings or their sewing meetings or whatever they were involved with and talk to the wives of the men in other unions. And then the wives would go back and say to their husbands, you know, you really ought to think about joining the Teamsters. In the strike. And they did. By the time the strike was over, 35,000 workers were on strike.
What I find interesting in this strike is that, you know, no one was untouched as far as communication, and as Karen said, as they planned everything, they even, when you're organizing the people that are unemployed so they don't break your strike, I thought that was, you know, brilliant. And we look at it now, and, you know, as much as they planned, they still had obstacles even within their own organization.
They didn't have cell phones.
There was no cell phones. You know,
Right.
they and correct me if I'm
Email.
wrong, Karen. The warehousemen, they were like, well, you guys should be in a different union, a different local, and the leadership was like, nope, they're going to be in this local, and
Yep.
they went against the grain in so many different ways.
Yep.
But as much as they planned, all these obstacles from both sides were coming in. And,
Yep.
you know, at the end of the day, you know, as Randy says, worker power prevails in the end.
Well, in the end, too, the warehousemen started seeing how they could benefit from what these guys were doing. So that broke down the walls a little bit. One of the things that they did communication-wise that was brilliant was they created a newspaper for the strikers, and it came out every day and told them what was going on, what the issues were, what the police were doing. So every day these workers knew.
So
Now,
it was
those
their
of you that are listening, if you ever get a chance, watch this documentary. It was done years ago, called Labor's Turning Point, and it is about this strike. And it was done in the 70s, so they were able to interview folks that were now older that had been on the strike line. And when you listen to the wives saying they didn't know if their husband was going to come home that day, you know, because they didn't know if he'd be shot or whatever. And they tell their story about how they got involved and how they pushed each other to stay motivated. It's incredible.
and the patience, you know, in today's day, in our modern day, we want
Yes.
things so fast and now, and it's gotta, if it doesn't happen in a very short period of time, we kind of turn our head and move on.
Yeah.
Like we have to recognize that our foundation, I mean, every law in America, the way I see it, every law for workers in America was built off of this strike. Because
it was.
if this didn't prevail, and if this strike in Minneapolis wasn't successful, that then led to strikes in other parts of the country, including San Francisco and a number of areas where they shut down cities, and they said, we've had enough. You're not going to keep doing this to workers. And obviously, as you look back on history, you see how poorly workers were treated in the 1930s, anywhere from, and before. So now you think of any worker protection that's been established, and it literally originated right here because workers said, if we come together, we can actually change the law. If we and when you talk to Harry DeBoer, not talk to him, but when you read the stuff that he's written, and you recognize, what was made it successful, it was mass picketing, workers talking to one another, connecting with each other on common issues, essentially to stop this corporate greed that is no different today than it was in 1934.
No, no different whatsoever. And the same kind of obstacles, that we face today and we get really frustrated about, they were facing double and
triple,
they
tenfold.
Understood. Harry was one of the ones that said two things. One, like you said, patience, that a crop doesn't grow overnight. All right, that we have to be patient. And the other thing he said was we cannot retaliate. He said, if they're beating us, we can fight back, but we cannot plan activities that are violent to retaliate against what they've done to us, because we will lose the public if we do that.
And you lose your internal support.
He was very smart. Those guys were all very smart, and they waited it out. And of course, he had a hard time with some of the young hotheads because, when they're in their 20s, they just want action. And, the advice to them was slow it down, slow it down, slow it down.
Yeah.
Don't burn yourself out. This is a long haul.
Did you want to chime in?
Yeah, you took I was actually thinking that. I was like, if I was in my 20s in 1934, I don't know if I would have, calmed down. I think I would have been the opposite, but I think it, as far as them strategically planning this thing out, it takes a different type of person to deliver that message and get people to listen to you, especially when they're being attacked and their lives are being threatened. And for somebody to say, I'm going to listen to these individuals as leaders, that's a lot of charisma, and obviously when they speak from the heart and they have their best interest, I think it resonated with the workers, and they're like, we're going to follow these individuals,
And I think
Teamsters had a history of that, and we've lost some of that. But the older members always mentored the young guys, and always pulled them back by the shirt collar if they were getting too feisty or whatever. And they'd say, listen, let me tell you why. And they really had open conversations with them so that they weren't just young members. They were young members being trained how to step into the older guys' shoes. And we've lost some of that. That was something that was very characteristic of Teamsters, of taking those young folks under their wing. And that made a huge difference.
I think you make a good point that we need to get back to that. In other words, as the next generation comes in, making sure that we explain the organization, understand the connection, the worker power, the connectivity, and what it means. Because when you read a lot of what came out of the success from 1934, one of the things that stands out to me over and over again is that no matter what the police or corporations kept throwing at the scenario, no matter how many people they shot, no matter how many people they wrongfully incarcerated, no matter how many times they tried to break the lines, the attitude was, if we throw more people at it, then we always outnumber the situation, and eventually they're going to listen. And I think you hit on something I want to touch on again, is that it wasn't based on retaliation. It was, fine, you want to arrest these 100 people or 400 people, there's another 400 right behind, and now guess what? The jail's going to fill up, and then you're going to have to let them out because we still have 1,000 people in the street who have refused to go back to work. The unemployed is not going to do the work, and as a result of workers in Minneapolis totally banding together, they they forced all of those industries to say, all right, what are we what's gonna make a fair deal, and then that led to success throughout the entire country.
Yeah, it certainly did, and everybody was involved. I got to put a little pitch in for the women. Marvel Dobbs, who was the wife of Farrell Dobbs, who was one of the leaders of the strike, really corralled the women, and not only did they run the soup kitchen and help in the infirmary, but she had them doing what she called annoying activities. They would go down to the courthouse in a huge group, and they would bang pots and pans, and they would sing bawdy songs and just create a scene. And the reason they did that was because then they would get arrested, and it would keep the cops away from the strike line, and also they filled up the jail. And that was one of their main things that they did quite frequently.
And hearing these stories, you hear the individual sacrifice that everybody's making for the collective goal, right? And it's like, we get it, and in today's day, we really have to examine the Teamsters labor movement. Laws in America for workers would not be what it is if it wasn't for these people. Like,
it's
period.
True. The AFL has a button that says, organized labor, the people that brought you the weekends. And I always say in my presentations, when I talk about this strike, I always say the Teamsters could have a button that said, the Teamsters, the people that brought you everything else, because we did.
Yeah. I kind of believe that strike and that local and that whole movement was
574 and 544
Yeah.
for those of you that are history buffs in the Teamsters.
Yes. Define not only labor law in the United States, but it set the tone to kind of calm down the class war that was happening. You had class war, and it settled. I believe it settled that down. I believe it changed the Teamsters for a better because of that one. The leadership in there of those locals changed the way the landscape of even the way our organization operated at that time.
Well, and it did, and it changed somebody else that was really important, and that was Dan Tobin. Now, Dan Tobin protected that union like it was his baby. He'd been the president since 1907, and in the 30s, a lot of, anti-communism was going on, a lot of hatred of unions and all that kind of stuff. And Tobin at first was not sure about this strike because some of the leaders in that strike had different political opinions. They were kind of really leftist, and he didn't like the idea of that strike. And so he wasn't going to support it. But he liked Farrell Dobbs. He knew Farrell Dobbs really well. So finally he sat down and he listened to what Farrell was trying to say and what their goal was. And that turned him. And that made him stretch a little bit. Now, he'd been very activist and very liberal and, out there when he was a young man. But by the time the strike comes along, he's older and he's afraid of losing what they built.
So I got a little less than 3 minutes left here on the whole show. So I only got about 2 minutes with you. So time flies by fast when we're having these conversations, right? Right, Karen? Right. Sum it up. I don't know. What do you want to close out? What you've had to say? I mean, I'm assuming this is just mind blowing for a lot of people to listen to, and really appreciate you coming on.
That we are no different today than those families were in the 30s. They were afraid. They had the same excuses the kid had. This after school, or mom had to bake bread and she didn't have time to get on the strike line, but they did it. And I think my sum up of it is that we can do what they did. We can do it better even because we have more tools, more resources. But what we have to do is emulate their soul, their heart. Because like you said early on, they really gave up things for the whole. And that's something we've kind of gotten away from. And now we're at that point where corporations are treating us now just like they did in the 30s. And we've had enough.
Yep.
And it's time.
It's
time
is.
to reach down in that bag of tricks. It's time to reach down in each one of ourselves and pull up that activist person that is there.
And
is ours through legacy, and we need to emulate what they did because we can be as successful.
We owe it to that generation and the sacrifice that they did for us to be just as passionate about it as they are.
Absolutely.
And we cannot take it for granted. Karen, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate you being on the show. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and we'll get you back on again in the future. Obviously, you're more than welcome to come out at any point. I'm going to wrap up the show. I think I got about 30 seconds left, right? I got 30 seconds left.
All right, you do it. Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Karen. And this is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, a longtime organizer, first-time radio host. We're building worker power in the Inland Empire. You see our billboards, your buses. You see all the things that we're doing to try to encourage workers to do exactly what they did in 1934. What can you do to build worker power? Talk with your family. Talk with your friends. Talk with your neighbors. Longtime organizer, first-time radio host, signing off.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future of working families. Teamsters1932.org.
I'm Ava Gaia reporting your local news on KCAA. Hemet has set a course to dress up commercial corridors, retain existing businesses, increase property values, and boost business vitality. As an incentive, the city has adopted an improvement grant and authorized the waiver of planning and building permit fees. Air quality in Southern California will get some improvement under an EPA climate pollution reduction grant. $500 million is headed to the South Coast AQMD to help decarbonize the transportation and freight corridors. Victorville is gearing up for a new sheriff's station. It is envisioned to occupy 2.5 acres, triple the size of the current facility, including a civic plaza, public event space, and expanded parking offices. Federal funds of $3.7 million will go toward the land acquisition and design. The city of Victorville contracts with the county sheriff's department for its police protection. Riverside County's annual assessment roll has reflected a 7.1% increase in property values. It was largely due to significant new construction. The total valuation of $433 billion included land, structures, fixtures, and personal property. Home prices held steady, with the median Riverside County home price now at $618,000, according to Redfin. Here's your local weather. Inland Empire Metro continued very warm days and warm moonlit nights through Thursday. Highs to 102, daybreak lows around 72. Slightly cooler Friday into the weekend. Mountains, chance of afternoon showers and thunderstorms ending, but continued quite warm. Resort level highs through Friday in the 80s and 90s. Deserts partly cloudy this afternoon with diminishing chances of shower and thunderstorms. Otherwise, an excessive heat warning through Thursday, highs from 104 to 117. Beaches partly cloudy nights with patchy fog, mostly sunny afternoons with highs into the upper 70s. Surf 2 to 4 feet, water 58 to 72. I'm Ava Gaia, and that's your local news on KCAA 106.5 and 1050 AM, the stations that leave no listener behind.